Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Eric.
And this week we are going behind the scenes of the first ever Saturday Night Live. That's right. This week we are talking about Jason Reitman's new film, Saturday Night, which is a behind the scenes of the chaotic 90 minutes leading up to the premiere episode of Saturday Night Live, which I will admit I did not know until I went and saw this movie, was on October 11th, 1975. So they actually perfectly timed, because this movie was released on October 11th. This is the 50th anniversary season of Saturday Night Live, if you are a fan. So they managed to get that to work out pretty well for them. So this movie from Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan, his partner, they co-wrote Ghostbusters Afterlife. I believe they did work on the script for Frozen River, but Reitman didn't direct it, probably because he was working on this film. But Jason Reitman has done quite a few different films. I've liked him for a long time. His first kind of big feature was Thank You for Smoking back in 2005.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been 20 years of him making films now. That's one of my favorites. He did Up in the Air. He did Juno. He did Young Adult. He's done a lot of different interesting things. He's also done things you wouldn't expect, like The Front Runner, which was a weird biopic with Hugh Jackman, that weird political biopic from the 70s that you may or may not expect from someone like him. But he goes back to the 70s for this one, and we pick up the action at 10 p.m. on Saturday, October 11th, 1975. This film is shot pretty much in real time. It goes for about an hour and 45 minutes, and we pick up at 10 p.m. and go right into the beginning of the first iconic episode of Saturday Night Live. You're following Lorne Michaels, the producer and creator, played by Gabriel LaBelle, who you may recognize from The Fabelmans. I was like, this guy looks familiar. This guy looks familiar. And then I looked at this credit and I'm like, oh yeah, that is the kid from The Fabelmans.
Yeah.
And his producing partner, Dick Ebersol, who is played by Cooper Hoffman. They're trying to keep the NBC studio exec, played by Willem Dafoe, at bay. Nobody knows what this show is, even Michaels himself. As we pick up, they have a lot of ideas, a lot of things getting thrown at the wall. You have a lot of actors playing other iconic performers who got their start on Saturday Night Live. Corey Michael Smith, who we saw as the Riddler on Gotham. That's what I always think of first when I see him, playing Chevy Chase. Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd. You have an actor playing Billy Crystal. We had an actor in kind of a dual role. Nicholas Braun played not only Andy Kaufman, but also Jim Henson. That was pretty funny. You have the original cast included John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Lorraine Newman, Jane Curtin. So you get a lot of good kind of impressions. And I have to say, I was impressed with the way these actors slid into those roles. I really enjoyed Corey Michael Smith and Dylan O'Brien, because those are probably two of the most well-known in Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd that have very unique performance and delivery styles. And I thought those guys really nailed it.
Perfect.
I really enjoyed Gabriel LaBelle as Lorne Michaels, and Rachel Sennett as his wife, who was one of the writers on there, Rosie Schuster. There was just a whole bunch of things that I thought were really fun. They balanced the comedy, kind of the drama. There is a intensity and energy. Every once in a while you get a time update and that ticking clock and the pressure. You get to see the pieces as they're getting put together, the chaos behind the scenes. I'm actually giving this 2 thumbs up. I loved this movie. This is Jason Reitman is one of my favorite filmmakers, and this popped right up into top 3 of his films for me, and is right up. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars, which, if you know me, I've ranked over like 9,000 films, and I've only given 37 5-star reviews. So I don't give stars away. I've only have 4 films that I've given 4.5 stars this year. out of the hundreds that I've seen. This one just worked really well for me. I loved the experience. It was a great surprise. I was so pumped up that, as I told you, Eric, before the show kicked off, I went and found the original pilot episode of Saturday Night Live and watched that this morning to kind of see some of the pieces, because you see them working on it throughout this film.
Yeah. I adore the cast of this almost more than I adore some of the people involved in Saturday Night Live and originally. Gabriel LaBelle, I don't know how they made that essentially that kid. I know he's like 20, he's like now in his 20s, but like he looks so much older. I could not place him. I was like, that can't be like the kid from the Fablemans. The Fablemans only 2 years old, and like, it's him.
Gabriel LaBelle is probably older than we realize. It doesn't give a year. It just says he was born September 20th. If I was him, I'd probably. But he's been in.
Oh, he was born 2002. He's 22 years old.
Okay, so. But he's been in films for a while, because his first screen credits are 2015. So.
Is it?
And he was in The Predator, which was 2018.
Oh yeah, I was kind of curious who he was in that. I haven't watched that since it came out in theaters.
He's in another movie this year called Snack Shack, which has gotten a lot of positive reviews. It is now streaming on Prime. I went and looked it up. I have not seen it, but now I'm kind of curious to dive in to that as well. I just thought he was really good.
Yeah. And Rachel Sennett, I think I'm just like I think pretty much if I see her name and face in a movie, I'm gonna go see it at this point. I don't. She's never like Bodies, Bottoms. The other movie from the director of Bottoms, the name of it is escaping me.
Let me look.
It's very intense. She goes to.
Wasn't that the same director that did Shiva Baby?
Shiva Baby. That's it. Yep. And or Shiva Baby. And now this, like, just like immediately trust that. And then just even Dylan O'Brien, like, amazing. And I always hear good things about him. No matter what he's been in, like Love and Monsters, that one that's kind of like a Jason Bourne kind of ish type movie, American something, and the Maze Runner series, like, always everybody points out, well, this thing he's in is okay, but this actor is somebody to watch. He does a particularly good job. And I like, yeah. And again, just Corey Michael Smith, having grown up watching Chevy Chase do a lot of things, like watching Christmas Vacation every year and all this kind of stuff, that was insane. Watching that guy just pull off that attitude. And then there's this long history of just behind the scenes stories. There's been so much talk about his personality off screen, particularly around the show Community.
Which reminds me, that exchange between him and J.K. Simmons
oh my gosh
was
oh my gosh
phenomenal.
Yeah. And just all right, okay, J.K. Simmons, I need to see more of you. This but and then there's Kaya Jordan Gerber, who plays Jacqueline Carlin, who's in that scene with them. She looks so much like Rachel Bilson that I was like, interesting. I remember Rachel Bilson being like this age like 20 years ago in Jumper, and like
I can't believe See, you and I have such a different.
I know
when you say Rachel Bilson, I think of the OC. When you say Rachel Bilson, you think of Jumper. Jumper would like not be top 5 things.
No, not for anybody. Not for anybody. Absolutely. But still, the OC is so long ago. You know, like, that's like the thing. I just never watched the OC.
I guess that's true. I think it's 21 years old.
Yeah. So
Adam Brody looks the same though, so that's okay.
Yeah. I really like Lamorne Morris as Garrett Morris. He's probably the one that
So
that
good.
looks and sounds the least for that, like compared to everyone looking like who they're looking like. Nicholas Braun, yeah, as both Andy Kaufman and Jim Morrison. Like it is. I keep hopping just from cast member to cast member because the experience of watching the movie is like being passed around in a maze where you're constantly like touching in with what's happening with the different characters as they sort of pop off. The relatively unknown the Matt Wood as John Belushi was
Uh-huh.
spectacular. Um,
I really enjoyed the one that played their head writer too. I'm trying to look up his. He's for such an essential role. Tommy Dewey, who played Michael O'Donoghue,
mm,
his back and forth with the censor,
yes. Oh
just
my gosh.
and then his back and forth with
George
Matthew Reese, who
Carlin and
played George Carlin,
yeah.
was. I mean, he had so many hilarious moments. That was the nice. This movie has a huge and talented ensemble cast and gave everyone really kind of their moment
Yeah.
in there that resonates with you, that sucks you in.
Yeah, and just the rhythm of this I compared to something like Birdman of just like the just constant movement of the whole thing. I absolutely adore it. I I'm I'm stuck between a thumb up and a two thumbs up, and I'm not 100% sure why. Um, because it does everything it's trying to do. Like I'm yeah, I'll go two thumbs up because I don't know what's stopping me from going two thumbs up. Um
Hand cramp, maybe.
yeah, I don't know. It was an absolute blast. Um I just think like maybe there's a bit to it that like I think it moves around so much that there's a little bit of I don't like Lorne Michaels' story in particular is like the core of it, and then even though I'm enjoying every distraction from that core, it still is time diluted away from that. And so there's just kind of I don't know. I enjoyed every second of the movie, so I had whatever. It's two thumbs up. Um,
Yeah, and just the drama and the tension. Obviously, we know because the show has been on for 50 years that it's going to be a success, and that pilot went off and
yeah,
was an iconic start. But when they say go to live, and you have that moment before Belushi pops out, you feel this tension. I'm like,
yeah,
that is to me how well done it was, because I mean, you already know how it turns out. That's the thing with biopics. You don't have to wonder where the story is going. It's just whether they build the world and the compelling characters and the stuff. And I just thought it was a blast. I know some people have said you can get a lot of this. There's a book about the kind of behind the scenes and the creation of Saturday Night Live. I have not read that, and I'm sure that makes for a good companion piece. But I really enjoyed this movie, and it was nice to see kind of Reitman back. His first three features
mm,
I thought were an incredible like chef's kiss, because it
yeah.
was Thank You for Smoking, then he did
Phew.
Juno, and then he did Up in the Air. And Up in the Air is a personal top 10 film
I
all
think
time
"Thank
for
You
me.
for Smoking" is one of mine.
It was in both those movies were in my top 50 all-time films, but Up in the Air is one of the rare few that I've given 5 stars to, that I've probably seen it 20 times since
Mm.
it came out. And then we had kind of like some weird, I knew what they were doing with young adult. It doesn't quite work. There are some other things that he kind of did in some of those years. That Labor Day movie, I don't know if you've ever even seen that one, with Kate Winslet and Josh Brolin. That's a little bit weird. He did a movie called Men, Women, and Children. Tully, which I liked more
Oh
than
yeah.
most, but I wouldn't say is exceptional. But I really enjoyed when he came back and did Ghostbusters Afterlife. I thought that was kind of a surprising film. That remains actually my favorite of the Ghostbusters movies, as we talked about earlier this spring. And then with this, I felt like, oh man, right back in his zone. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what comes next for him. Well, in addition to Saturday night, we're going to do what we started doing a couple weeks ago, which is sharing some things that we also may have seen that we wanted to throw out and highlight that are out there available for you. So, Eric, why don't you go first? What is something you've been watching that you want people to check out?
So the highlight of what I want people to see this week is It's What's Inside. This is on Netflix. Watch it and do not look at anything other than that picture. And when you're going on Netflix, be careful to hit play before it starts to do
Get
its automatic preview thing and tell you what's going on. It is extremely well performed. There are actors in this movie who have to do things that stretch an actor in terms of range, and I can't explain to you why, but you will be shocked at your ability to follow what is happening in this story based on the actors' performances. And I will tell you the same thing that I know, which is that it is a mystery, uh, sort of a twists and turns kind of a movie, more than like a mystery of like what or who, it's not like a murder mystery, but like it is it is intense, it is funny, it is so cleverly written. It's just like a really decent hour and a half of just entertainment. And it's interesting getting into the heads of some chronically online characters and influencers and people like that, and just seeing how they have to make certain moral decisions. And I think that's everything I can say. I just really want people to see it so that I can talk about it with the people.
This one comes from writer-director Greg Jarden. It actually premiered at Sundance because Sundance has a section that is like a horror competition. So this is kind of I think they released it at this point in time because they consider it part of the spooky season run.
Oh,
And I would say it has elements of that while not being like a traditional. That
yeah.
we've talked about this. Horror is a big
Yeah,
umbrella.
it's an umbrella.
Like I know they marketed Caddo Lake, which came out on Max as a horror movie, and if you watched it, I don't know if horror would have been the genre that jumped out to me, but I can see why they decided to stick it in there because M. Night Shyamalan was the producer, and it was from the directors who worked on his show Servant.
Oh, okay.
But What's Inside, for me, I didn't like it quite as much as you. I thought the beginning was slow, but it has a fascinating third act turn. So even if you're not totally into it at the beginning, I encourage you to stick with it to see what it's going to give you at the end, because that did pick it up for me a little bit. So definitely one to check out. It is streaming on Netflix, and from what I remember, I think it's under 100 minutes. It's not a long commitment
Mm, yeah.
for a watch. In an era where sometimes we're getting really long ones, it's been nice. This week we've had a few crisper, shorter movies, which is preparing us for next week, which apparently we need 2 hours and 15 minutes to have a sequel to a horror film, because that's the way life is going. I'm going to mention a couple of other things that are opening in theaters. I think we've talked about it the last few weeks. We are getting tons of multiple releases in theaters every week now. So there are actually 3 other movies that come out in wide release. One of them I haven't seen yet, but I saw a preview screener for The Apprentice, which I know has been kind of a hotly anticipated film. It takes the action back to the late 70s and shows Sebastian Stan as a young Donald Trump and his partnership and mentorship with lawyer Roy Cohn, played by Jeremy Strong. Both those performances are great. I thought the movie was uneven a little bit at times, but it is a big season for Sebastian Stan. He's good in this. He's incredible in a movie called A Different Man, which is not playing in every theater nationwide, but is playing in a lot of theaters. So if you like Sebastian Stan, a couple of great chances to see him. If he doesn't get at least one acting nomination out of these two movies, what are we doing as a society? And second, I saw this on a Fathom event a couple of weeks ago, but now it is actually out for everyone to be able to see starting this weekend. And that is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. This is a documentary about Christopher Reeve and his wife. It goes through his entire career, but it starts with the accident that paralyzed him and kind of that story of him and his family. It is told mostly through interviews with his close friends and his 3 adult children. Christopher Reeve and his wife neither of them are still with us, obviously. So it kind of goes to the story. It is a really moving documentary. It is so far still my favorite documentary of the year. I'm kind of excited that it's coming out full in theaters for people to be able to check out. Very emotional story, but if you've been a fan of the Superman movies and Christopher Reeve, this kind of goes through his life and his career. It really spends a long time on his deep, close personal friendship with Robin Williams, and a lot of discussion about that relationship and what his loss meant to Robin Williams as well. It was, bring the Kleenex. It's definitely deeply emotional, but I was really blown away by the documentary. Not a long commitment. I think it's under a couple of hours, but it is really cool to see. It was really fascinating. Some very powerful interviews with his children. Like his youngest son, I think, was 3 when he was paralyzed.
Wow.
So like the memories and kind of going through all that, it's just, it was very interesting, very powerful, and that is out this week. So 2 incredible movies, at least in theaters this week, between Saturday night and Superman, and some great streaming options as well. So it is getting to be an exciting time for films all the way around.
Yep.
Which sadly leads us to next week.
Yeah.
We'll prepare for Smile 2, which for reasons, as
over
I told
2
Eric,
hours
that surpass sanity, is 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I guess the original was 2 hours. So maybe that's not as long. But
well, I imagine if you're into it, then that it's gonna be like a fun ride, and I imagine that if you're not into it, that is gonna be a torturous oh, we're an hour and a half into it, and I still gotta sit and wait and see what's happening. People are still smiling at every turn, and jump scares abound, and
the only thing I'm grateful for is I won't have to see that trailer anymore because the movie's finally coming out.
I'm fairly excited because even if I'm not entertained by the movie, I'll be entertained by your torture of the movie. So,
which
it's great.
I mean, that's unfair. I don't know if I will like this or not. I was surprised when we talked about the original one. I was surprised that I actually. I mean, I didn't love it. That's not, I haven't had a personality transplant, but I liked it more than I expected. I thought it was more effective than I expected. But I also, that was never the kind of movie where I thought this should be a franchise. But I felt the same way about Saw, and I still maintain. I saw the original one in theaters, and I thought that was deeply unsettling and kind of a creative idea. And they're like, we're going to turn this into a 10-film franchise. I have not seen a single one in theaters since the first one.
See, that's the thing, is I could go on a mini rant about how I feel like Saw 1 is separate from the rest of the movies, and they kind of
probably true.
Created their own thing in order to continue it on. It's like there's Saw, And then there's Sawtooth through a million. Like,
Well,
it's
in 15 years, when we're still waking up early on Saturday mornings and we're then talking about Smile 20,
yeah, we'll reflect back on this time. We're like, remember when there was just two of them? That's wild.
will we still be smiling? Who
Oh
knows?
gosh.
Anyway, we will look forward to that and whatever other fun things that we managed to get through during that. I wish I could screenshot that right now. But for now, head out, see, make sure you check out Saturday
See,
Night
Saturday
in
night.
theaters,
Oh,
Superman in theaters, and it's What's Inside streaming on Netflix. You don't even have to change out of your PJs to catch that one. It's our gift to you. Until next week, we will see you at the movies.